Every year, CPJ publishes what we call our annual prison census. It's a survey that looks at journalists who are in jail on December 1 every year around the world. Unfortunately, last year in 2020, the number was at a historic high, 274 globally. In Sub-Saharan Africa, that number was 45 journalists behind bars as at December 1. Of those 45 journalists, two were women, two Burundian women. Such figures do not present the full picture because women working out in the field face unique challenges that their men counterparts may not face. So, for instance, in my own research, talking to journalists who cover politics, most recently in Uganda, you hear women talking about the societal expectations on them and what that means about their ability to go out in the field for weeks on end following political campaigns. Can they do that? Will they be allowed to do that, not just by their editors, but also by their families? Recently, women in Somalia were also, around International Women's Day, were also speaking out about this stigma associated with their profession. Online harassment, unfortunately, has risen as a huge challenge for all journalists across the world covering, specific beats like politics or gender or corruption. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, a trend that we're seeing increasingly is that women are targeted by particularly vitriolic and gendered attacks online. During the South African election, which wasn't last year, it was in 2019, we spoke to South African women who spoke about being doxxed, being targeted by trolls and bots for, very gendered insults, having politicians sick their followers against them, essentially. Sexual harassment. Unfortunately, this is women are particularly vulnerable to this. It can lead women to decide, no, I'm not going to go cover that story. I'm going to stick to this place where I think I'm going to be safe from harassment. Mm-hmm. It can lead women to leave newsrooms entirely. And what happens when this happens? What are the consequences of this? Is that we have very important voices that we should be having in our newspapers and on our TV being taken away, the diversity of the voices that we listen to.
Obviously, the face of journalism has changed a lot. How do you establish and distinguish between the kinds of journalists that are out there, and how does CPJ assist?
As CPJ, we have taken a deliberate decision not to be in the job of defining journalists. Because we operate in so many different countries, but because we've also seen that narrow definitions of who a journalist is can be weaponized to again erode the kind of information that is allowed to make it to the public sphere. Mm-hmm. Rather, what we deal with is people who are, or the people we try to defend is people who are committing acts of journalism, as we say. So these could be columnists. These could be people who use their public Facebook pages to tell the stories of their communities and what their communities are going through, or to share opinions about what is going on in their own countries. If you look in different countries and different places, particularly where access to mainstream media is not as easy, these are avenues where people are doing very good reporting about their communities and speaking out about injustices. The reason why it's so important, particularly at this moment, to cast this net widely is because we've seen an unfortunate trend in several Sub-Saharan African countries where attempts to define what is journalism, attempts to license journalists are being weaponized. A couple of them come to mind during the Ugandan election in last year, for instance. In Tanzania, for instance, you need to have a license to run a YouTube channel, which of course acts as a way of locking out rather than opening up, so that we can hear from as many people as possible, so that this space does not become an elite space where only certain perspectives are allowed.